All right. Hello, all. This is the Project One portfolio. We'll go through what the assignment is and go through that. All right. First thing you want to have open is D2L and projects and other info under the content tab. And we'll be going through the description of the Project One portfolio. So you should have already done the first part of this assignment, which was take the Myers-Briggs typology indicator at humanmetrics.com. And one of the things that I hope you did was took the personality test and looked up possible careers and careers to avoid that match those that match your field of study. For example, if you're in economics and with my typology, an executive or business analyst was usually one that would come up, or financial analyst. Now, the purpose in doing that was to determine, one, if you're pursuing a career that matches your personality type. On occasion, what has happened is I've had a student, in one particular, and I want to tell a quick story, of a gal that was doing this exercise, and she took the MBTI, and she took it in a different class I had, and she was taking personal finance with me, and she asked me any recommendations for job hunting, and she asked me to look at her resume, and I did that, and I happened to notice that she was trying to look into getting into an administrative assistant position, and her minor and major were in economic or business, something along those lines. And I was talking to her, and I thought something was kind of odd, because she was the type of student that would ask me questions during class, and in one circumstance, she even challenged me on a formula I was showing, and she said, "I don't think that's right." And she pulled up a Wikipedia page that had the formula. So again, this didn't seem like a person that would be a good fit for an administrative assistant position, so I had her take the Myers-Briggs, or find out her Myers-Briggs score from my previous class, and I asked her what it was, and she told me, and it happened to be the same one as mine. So I recommended to her, I said, I want you to go home, get on a computer, and Google or search that typology and then careers to avoid. And she did that. And she emailed me at midnight that night and said, "How did you know this was a career I should stay away from?" And I laughed, responded back, and I did the next day to her, and I said, "Well, one, I have the same typology." And I said, the reason that would probably not be a good field to pursue is because you're not wired for it. And again, I don't have anything against administrative assistants. It's just sometimes people aren't wired for certain jobs or certain fields. And as she read it and better understood her typology, I asked her, I said, "So why shouldn't you get into an administrative assistant position?" And she said, "Because I'd probably get fired from it." And I said, "Yep." Her typology, and the reason she was pursuing it, is she was working at a small business that had just started, and she was an administrative assistant. She got to organize all the paperwork and organize all the billing and to organize all this stuff in the most efficient way possible. So she thought anytime she'd walk into an administrative assistant position that that's what she'd be doing. What she later found out is that probably wouldn't be the case, and more or less she'd be doing other activities and be operating a system that was already in place, already created by somebody else. So we're going through this exercise kind of for the same instance, is to find if what you're pursuing and hoping to pursue with this education actually fits with your personality. And we'll jump back into this here. Now, on occasion, we do find students that are pursuing an occupation that doesn't match their personality. That being said, they always say, "Well, geez, what a waste of time. I've been in school for 3 years. I'm pursuing this, hoping to get into this." Well, one of the things they often are doing is pigeonholing themselves. They're thinking and had it set in their mind they were going to do this. They're pursuing an education, and they get so lost. What are they going to do next? And again, pigeonholing. Instead, look at all the possible options that exist out there that are possibly going unnoticed that you should maybe take a peek at. And what I want you to do in the income analysis, or the first part of the income analysis, is I want you to come up with 3 different occupations that might be of interest to you that are somewhat unrelated but could still fit within your educational background. For example, if you're studying consumer affairs, then pursuing and trying to become a dentist probably wouldn't be a good option for this assignment. If you want to become a dentist, then you should have been either pre-med or pre-dental in order to get into that. So we don't want to be too unrelated. But on SDSU's website, under the econ department, they had a bunch of careers that graduates of the econ program at SDSU picked, and I found them interesting because a lot of these were unrelated to maybe what you think of somebody to do with an econ degree. One of them was sort of a business administration, and this student wanted to become a prison guard. And some people say, well, why would you do that? And it's, well, prison guards make pretty good money, and they get a pretty decent pension plan and not have to contribute towards it, and they can usually retire at a pretty young age. I think the going rate is something like $35,000, but then you can get a fully funded pension plan at age 50 or 55. So another one was an accounting major that wanted to become a Secret Service agent. Now, a lot of people get confused and they think the Secret Service are the folks that guard the president, and they do, but their actual major responsibility is overseeing the currency and like counterfeiting and things like that. Another one was an electrical engineer, and I found out we actually have a professor in the engineering department that was a CIA analyst. So a lot of these are government related, but they don't necessarily have to be. Another one was a stats major that wanted to be a pollster for a political organization. One gal I had was a pre-med student, and she had a few other classes that actually could have got her into bioengineering. And she looked at work for a pharmaceutical company. Another one was an industrial engineer, and a young man said he wanted to be a ship captain. Well, can you be a ship captain with a degree in industrial engineering? Sure you can. You have to go to school to be a ship captain, especially for a large ship, but why not? So these are things that we want to look at as possible options. Another young lady looked at going into nursing, and she kind of found out she wasn't probably wired to be a nurse. Actually, that was an occupation she was recommended to avoid, but there were plenty of fields within the nursing arena that she could do. One of them was a caseworker for something with newborn children and stuff like that, where that did fit her profile, and she started looking up jobs. So again, I know some of you are already in your occupation that you'll probably be in for the rest of your life, but just as an exercise, a mental exercise, try to expand your horizon and look at different options that you can do with your educational background and that fits with your MBTI analysis. All right, the second step, once you find those 3 options, is there's a matrix under projects and other info. It says job matrix student handout, and we'll download that. I already have one popped up. And this is what it looks like. Now again, what I want you to do is put down those 3 different options up here, and then I want you to research them. Now, some of this is going to be really qualitative or general research. You're just Googling things and looking up in the internet or talking to a friend. I'm not going to check your resources on this stuff. I'll just assume you did the exercise. But the first row that we're going to look at is risk of injury, and I did this for myself. I have a financial instructor, bank manager, and FBI. Let's go ahead and put agent. And I have a bachelor's and master's in business administration. So risk of injury for a financial instructor is pretty low. Not real worried. Risk of injury for a bank manager would be pretty low. For an FBI agent, I put medium. I'm guessing, sure, in certain circumstances that might be dangerous, but I would wager to bet odds of getting injured on an oil rig are much higher than an FBI agent getting hurt. Responsibility. A lot of people think teaching is high responsibility, but in the collegiate environment, believe it or not, it's actually fairly low responsibility. Although I take my job very seriously and feel like I have a lot of responsibility to the students, I'm not required a ton of responsibility from my higher ups. Bank manager responsibility, I would rate that as kind of medium. And again, this is your best judgment, and you're doing it for your own self and your own edification. Responsibility for an FBI agent, I would assume to be fairly high. Next row we're going to look at is employment risk. And employment risk, what I'm looking for is sort of what the chances of you getting fired would be if you screwed something up. And that's the best way what we're trying to look at employment risk. As a financial instructor, it's actually pretty low. For a bank manager, if you screw something up, I would say it's probably medium, having been a bank manager. Odds of getting fired if you have a major screw up are probably pretty good. And an FBI agent, people say, well, wouldn't that be fairly high? But actually, the employment risk with most governmental jobs is pretty low. It takes quite a bit to get fired, again, from most jobs like that. Schedule requirements for these, again, are assumptions or estimates. For financial instructor, very flexible. For a banker, probably 8 to 5. FBI agent, would imagine it be very inflexible, but you have to get the job done. Educational requirement, just tell me what degree or level of degree. For some jobs, you probably won't need one. Occupational outlook is a little different. That's going to be quantitative, and I don't want you just to put numbers in here. For that, I want you to go to the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, Occupational Handbook, and I want you to look those up. And once you find them, and I'll just click on this. When you look under there, you'll look up the job that you're researching, and under there you get a number of statistics. One is the median pay. Now, I don't want you to use this website to find the median pay for that job. We're going to use a salary calculator to find that information, especially one that can look at years of experience. It'll have entry-level education. You can use that. On-the-job training, number of jobs, and really what I want you to find here is job outlook. And it has it for 2014 through 2024. And this is the information we want to put in this matrix. So you'd put growing, stable, whatever it says there in the percentage. Now, experience, typical experience required. Again, this is probably an estimate. For a financial instructor, most people aren't going to come in teaching finance without any experience in the field of finance and without a master's degree at a minimum and otherwise. Experience required for a bank manager, probably 3 to 5 years. FBI agent, I put 2 years or less. Typically, FBI agents come right out of school with either a bachelor's or master's degree. Personal rewarding, that is something, again, that you are going to estimate on your own. Do you think that job would be personally rewarding to you? You can use blogs or other resources to do a little more research. Again, it's probably going to be qualitative in nature. All right, the next piece of information we're going to look at is the salary. And for that, I'd like you to go to, if you go to D2L, okay, there's hyperlinks for income analysis, and that will have, the reason I have it like this as opposed to just having it in there is so you know these are all the hyperlinks for this exercise. If you download this, you can click right on these in Microsoft Word. Again, I already have these open, so the next one we're going to do is we're going to go to the coachcareerbuilder.com, and we're going to look up these jobs. And here, once you enter this information in, it'll give you an average national salary. And this is important for the next exercise as well. And I think I put account executive. You can also enter it by city and find out where those pay a little more. What I'm more interested in for this job is based on experience, how many years of experience you have, and how much you'll be getting paid for that experience. Now, this is kind of weird for an account executive because it looks like the less experience you have, the more money you actually make, which doesn't seem to make much sense, but whatever. Again, we're really looking for this. Now, in this situation, I don't believe for the life of me that an account executive with zero experience is making $72,000 to $80,000 a year on average. Now, maybe you know someone that works in this field and you know they don't make this kind of money. If we open up that Excel spreadsheet on D2L, go ahead and get there now. And it's down here, Master Project, Portfolio, Student Worksheet. And you open that up, this Excel spreadsheet. So once it comes up, what we'll do is, if you go to this tab down here, Salary Age Calculator, and again, you don't think that salary sounds correct, what you can do is enter it in, again, from Career Builder. And it says here $72,375. We'll enter that in here. Close to whatever it was, I just forgot. And it will tell you, based on a financial model, what you would be earning in the first years of your life. Now, this is based on age, not based on years of experience, but a lot of students I have, obviously, are in their maybe senior year of college and they're getting ready to graduate and they have interviews coming, so they want to find an entry-level starting position for that field. So for this one, it would be about $52,000 would be a starting salary, and that's statistically that is based on this average national salary. So if this is the mean salary for an account executive, we just use a quick financial model based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and that'll tell you what it is for a starting salary. The next thing that we need to do, and we're filling out that matrix. So we entered in the salary. The next thing we're going to look at is maybe a couple different places or options to live in. And we're going to use a cost of living calculator. And again, if you download these hyperlinks, we are going to be going to the bestplaces.net. It's a pretty good cost of living calculator. Now, I know some of you are probably just going to live in wherever you're living at now, or you know where you're going to be living, but do just one comparison so you become a little familiar with this, and compare a couple different cities. So I'm going to compare where do you live now. I'm going to enter Brookings, South Dakota. And I'm going to look at Austin, Texas. I'm going to live this annual income at $50,000, but you could change it based on whatever your salary is. And I'm going to hit compare. So what this tells me, and what I'm really looking at, is this overall cost of living index. 100 is the national average. And for this exercise, I just want you to compare the overall. So I will put in here, into the matrix, Brookings would be 95, and Austin, Texas, we're going to put, I think it was 106.5. We're going to enter that in here. Now, the other piece of information this shows you, and I like this, a salary of $50,000 in Brookings, South Dakota should increase to $56,000 in Austin, Texas. That will help you compare if you are living elsewhere and you're trying to figure out, well, wait a minute, I'm moving to Minneapolis. The salary is a couple thousand more, but you think the cost of living is going to be significantly more. And it helps you to compare apples to apples, and these are things that you want to consider. It's also kind of interesting to look at these different items and the impact of them on the cost of living. Looks like in Austin, Texas, the biggest one that attributes to the higher cost of living is housing. And again, the national average is 100, and here it just shows you the difference between the average. So that's what that score means. I'm not too particular when you're filling out this matrix. I'd like you to, at least in this first box, compare one different city, so I know you're aware of doing that. And then go through there. Just look at those. These are things you want to take into consideration when you're looking at different jobs. Now, the next thing you're going to do is, based on all of this information, is I want you to write a about a 1-page analysis, no more than 1 page, on what you found. And if we go back to D2L, all of this will be found under the description for the Project 1 portfolio. So you're going to fill out this matrix and do it on the one I give you in D2L. Don't try to reuse this one. It's an old one. And write again a 3/4 page to 1-page analysis of what you discovered. Here's what I want you to include in that. I want you to put your name, obviously your name, your major and minor. Incorporate the information you found in your MBTI analysis to the different jobs you looked at. Which seems to be the best option? What jobs, based on the MBTI, should you stay away from? What ones did it say careers you should avoid? Number 4, what options would be the one you will likely choose out of the 3, and why? And what happens when you incorporate location to your analysis, the cost of living? And based on all the information reviewed, what do you think, and this is a big one because we need this for the next exercise, what do you think is a plausible average starting salary? Okay, again, we need this. Now, you're not going to have to complete a personal income statement and balance sheet. We're not going to do it for this exercise because, well, it's of no benefit, I found in my in-class, and the other stuff will help get us there. So, again, you're going to write a 1-page analysis on this. What you found in the matrix, and again, try to incorporate some of what you found in here, all this information. And hopefully these are what you're looking at when you're trying to choose a job, and not just choosing an occupation based on emotion. Try to have some rationale to it. Now, if you, again, already have one of those jobs and you're already in their career field you're going to be in, I know some of you are non-traditional students, and that's why you're taking an online class, just be familiar with what to look at when you're trying to compare different occupations. You still need to write a 1-page analysis or 3/4 of a page analysis. Put it in a Word document, please. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to complete something that I call a benchmark budget. And I just simply call it the benchmark exercise. And as I said earlier in the video on expenses, I found early on when doing budgeting that most students don't have a good idea of what to estimate for budgeting purposes. So I created an exercise in an MSL spreadsheet that takes an average plausible starting salary and it splits it out for you based on the national average found from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. And the goal is, one, to figure out how much you can afford for these different items based on your level of income. The goal to the exercise is to make an attempt to spend less than the national average. And the idea is the thinking is, if you sort of apply a pun to living within your means, instead of living within your individual means or the salary that you think you'll have, try to live within the national mean or below the national mean. And when doing that, in theory, you should sort of, and we're talking about the consumer hourglass theory, in that theory, you should be in the upper class as opposed to the lower middle class. So I'm going to go ahead and go to that Microsoft Excel sheet, and we're going to go into the benchmark. Now, doing my analysis, I'm going to pick financial instructor. And by the way, I don't make $45,000 a year. For any of you that are interested, I make probably about $3,300 a class that I teach per semester. And I teach 5 classes a year. I do also do some consulting work on the side and supplement my income there. Largely, I make most of my money by my sugar mama wife. She's the breadwinner in our family. So I'm going to go ahead and put down, though, an average starting salary for me of $45,000. Okay, we'll just enter that here. Better put my name down. The next piece of information I want you to put in here is all the information from the money, the section on psychology, the money spending personality from Olivia Mellon's website. You are either an amasser, a hoarder, a spender, a money monk, or an avoider. I am an amasser. My 4-letter MBTI score is, whoops. No, it's not whoops. That's 5 letters. Is ENTJ. My locus of control is moderate internal. And my degree, I'll say I have a bachelor, well, business. There. Good enough. Okay. So I've entered all this information in here. The next piece of information we entered in was our average starting, plausible average starting salary as we want there. The next thing I need is my effective or marginal tax rate. Now, under this master project student portfolio worksheet, if you go to hyperlinks, you have all of the hyperlinks that we use in this class. And I'm going to go to marginal tax rate calculator here, moneychimp.com. I'm just going to click on this, and it'll pop up a marginal income tax calculator. Okay, once you're here, I don't want you to pay attention to this. We're going to scroll down, and this is what I'm looking for. Now, I'm married. My wife and I file our taxes jointly, and I'm just going to enter in my marginal income. Now, if I was actually doing this with my wife, it would be more than $45,000, but we're just going to use it for me. I hit calculate. Now, the piece of information I need on this is this number right here. And for me, it's 12.94, and that's my effective tax rate. What I don't want you to do is enter in just a number. I want you to use this calculator, and actually I know students that do this exercise correctly versus those that don't, because their effective rate will always be just shy of whatever their tax bracket is. On top of that, you're going to see a decimal place in it. Okay, you'll never see a 13% or an 11%. It's always going to be 11.68 or 12.94. It's never going to be a whole number. So 12.94, I'm going to go back to the Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to go to the benchmark tab, and I'm going to enter in 12.94 as an effective rate. Next thing I'm going to enter in is my monthly student loan payment. For those of you that are going to have student loans, I want you to estimate what the total of those student loans are going to be when you graduate. We're going to go back to these hyperlinks, and once you take your best guess at how much you're going to have to take out, I want you to go to the student loan calculator. It's at finaid.org. Once we get to that calculator and you know that number, we're going to enter this in. Okay, so I'm going to say I have $40,000 in student loans. The current interest rate on, I believe, subsidized loans, or excuse me, not subsidized loans, but through the federal government's loan program, it's 6.8%, so we're going to leave that alone. Now, here is a huge piece of information that you're actually going to see on a midterm and your final exam. For the loan term, if you have anything, I would say more than $40,000 in student loans, you are almost always going to want to choose an extended term plan, not the 10-year option. And the reason is, we'll find out here in a second. Actually, I'm going to go back and show you with 10 years what happens. Enrollment status, I'm going to go ahead and put graduating and bachelor's. Total years in college, put 5, and I'm going to hit calculate. Now, again, we have the loan balance of $40,000. Here is my monthly student loan payment based on those calculations. Now, here's what I want you to pay attention to. The neat part about this website, finaid.org, is it will tell you how much is estimated that you need to earn as a salary in order to make these payments and for the most part, do so comfortably. And that means in their estimates, that assumes you're paying 10% of your gross monthly income to repaying these student loans. The reason this becomes important is if you go over 10%, okay, you could be put in a financial precarious position. And if you're above 15%, odds of you getting into financial difficulty get very high, okay? It's not good. You don't want to spend more than 10% of your income for student loans. The problem in this day and age is odds aren't very good that that's going to happen. I would also, the one thing I don't like about this website is they act as if you have an option about how much money you're going to make in the future. And the last I checked, your employer is the one that writes your paycheck, not you. I know if you have your own job, you're a salesperson or something, or starting your own business, that might be a different story. But all right, so in this case, making $45,000 a year, having a student loan balance of $40,000, and paying it on the 10-year option, okay, the loan term, this means it's estimated that I'm going to need an annual salary of at least $55,000 to afford to repay this loan at 10%. Now, if I were to pay 15% of my gross monthly income to repay the the monthly amount, I would need an annual salary of $36,000 and some change a year. The downside, though, if I pay more than 10% is, but you may experience some financial difficulty. Now, there are some loan repayment programs that are where you pay just a portion of your salary. Now, I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to show you, though, because, again, for my circumstance, I said I would go ahead or that I make $45,000 a year. Now, if I choose this extended term option to 25 years to repay back the $40,000, I'm going to calculate, and you'll notice that the loan payment went from, I believe it was $450 down to $277. Now, let's look at what annual salary I would need to repay this back, and it says I would need a starting salary or an annual salary of $33,000. I'm going to go back to this benchmark. For a financial instructor, and that's the salary I base this off of, I put $45,000. So if I keep that at the loan term at 10 years, odds are I'm going to experience a financial difficulty because I'm only making $45,000 a year. But once I turn this to a 20-year term or a 25-year term to repay back the loan, then I'm okay. Then I'm able to do it. For the most part, you want to choose this extended term option. And I have a lot of students that say, well, I want to pay this off as soon as humanly possible. And that sounds great, but the problem is you may not make the amount of money to do that and afford other things like buying a home. Some people say, well, then I'll rent. Well, you have to understand, if you're renting an apartment or something, you're, to some level, you're throwing money away, and it really, in essence, you're paying somebody else's mortgage, or the landlord's mortgage. So you might as well build equity and buy your own house. All right, so I'm going to choose the extended term option, and my student loan payment on fineaid.org will be $277.63. So I'm going to enter that amount in here. 277, I believe it was 63. All right, you leave all this information there. Now, what happened here is based on this salary, based on this tax rate, and based on the amount that's taken out for student loans, that this calculator multiplies the remaining balance times a housing and a physical dwelling, pension, and all 23 of these line items, and it compares to the national average expended for it. And then it goes one step further, and it breaks it down per month. So down here, based on a $45,000 salary, this tells me how much I can afford, again, using the national average as a benchmark. Your job here is then to change this percentage rate going up or down, and so if I change this and say housing and physical dwelling, change this to 24%, even though the national average is 20%, and that means I will be spending $822.72 on a mortgage payment. So what you're going to do is go down and budget for each one of these items. Now, unfortunately, and I'm going to have to go back on this and fix this for you guys, but I used to have comment sections in each one of these boxes, must not have converted over when I downloaded it, where the comments in here would show you for housing in a physical dwelling, you can't spend more than 28% in line 1 here. The reason you can't do that is a bank will actually not loan you money for a house more than 28%. That's usually the threshold that they prevent you, or once you go over 28%, banks get a little leery, and often they won't lend you more than that. All right, pension and retirement. So again, let me start back at line 1. Your limit for line 1 is 28%. I would advise for line 2, if you want to retire wealthy, line 2 needs to be 10 to 15%. Well, actually, if you want to be wealthy, it needs probably to be 15 to 20%. The average in here for most students is 10%, or that's what I would advise a minimum being. Again, for line 2. Line 3, you leave alone. That's Social Security. You don't have control over that. The next thing we're looking at is housing and utilities. Now, for this line, you get to budget whatever you want, but I would prefer you keep it around 7%, maybe a touch less or a touch more. But for housing and utilities, that's going to be about the national average. Food at home, and we have 2 boxes here. We have food eating out and food at home. You can adjust these, but as we can see, about approximately 12.4% of your income is going to go towards food and eating. Now, again, you can shrink it a little and just eat bologna and peanut butter, or you can leave it as is, or you can adjust it because you don't like eating out and you have a preference to eat at home. That's up to you. You can make those adjustments. Now, line 6 and 7, we see here transportation vehicle payment. That is only for a vehicle payment. That's not for gas and maintenance of a vehicle. That's just for a vehicle payment. Now, usually I'll have a student say, well, what happens if I already own the car? Do I need to budget for this? And my answer is, or my next question always is that the last car or vehicle you'll ever own? Now, I hope you'll wisely say, well, probably not. Well, then you need to be saving. Even if you currently own a vehicle, you probably should be saving some money towards a vehicle payment. I'm the type of person, I like to drive used vehicles and cheap vehicles. I don't really get a kick out of vehicles, so I would probably put like 3 to 5% in there or over here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the first 7 and do this for myself. For housing and physical dwelling, I actually kidded to my wife one time that I would be fine living in a trailer house. She's not fine with that, so we live on an acreage in a fairly large house. But if it were my option, I wouldn't spend so much. So I'm going to put down 20% is all I want to spend. Now, you may have to double check. I'm going to put 20.0%. We got an annotation problem here. There we go. Mess around with it until you get it accurate. For some reason, this isn't carrying over correctly. Pension and retirement, I want to be wealthy, so I'm going to put 15% in there. Housing and utilities, I'm going to leave that at 7%. Now, for those of you that have Windows 7, when you download this, you should get comment boxes in here, and you should also not have to enter in period .07 and just enter in 7, and you'll be fine. Transportation and vehicle payment, as I said, or excuse me, food at home. I like to eat at home. I don't like eating out. So I'm going to go ahead. I see it's 7%. I'm going to increase that to 10%. For that. For transportation vehicle payment, I'm going to enter in 4% because, again, I like to drive cheap vehicles and run them into the dirt. Transportation other. Now, what this box is, if you were to live in like New York City, a lot of folks in New York City don't actually own a vehicle. I had a number of buddies in the Marine Corps that had never driven. Line 7 would be if you were taking the subway, taking cabs, things like that. So you can actually increase your transportation vehicle payment to account for this transportation other. So about 12.8% would be the maximum. Now, I would advise for transportation vehicle payment, you not have it that high if you want most of your money to go to your wealth bucket or your retirement. My apologies, I had to grab a drink. All right, so next line item, transportation other. I don't have a need for that because I live in South Dakota. I'm going to leave that at 0. Healthcare. Healthcare is going to be around probably $200 a month for a single young individual. If you have kids and others, it's going to be more than that. But I'm going to go ahead just to make life easy and put 5.7. Food eating out, okay, we had 7% for food at home, 5%, which is 12.4% if we add those. I put 10% here, so I'm going to enter 2% or 0.02% for eating out. So I'll have almost $70 a month here to eat out. Entertainment, I don't like going out very often. So my budget for entertainment is going to be low. The national average is 5.4%. I'm going to put 1%. Got the internet. All right. Transportation, gas, and maintenance. That'll probably be equivalent to the national average. So I'm going to put 0.048. Apparel and services. I'm pretty cheap. Other than my business suits, I dress fairly cheap. So I'm going to put 0.03%. Cash contributions are donations to a church or donations to the Red Cross that you make. Now, I find this interesting that cash contributions in the United States are, in 2009, the average was 3.7%. But the average retirement savings was 2.45%. I think we have a little bit of a problem when we're donating 3.7% of our income versus saving 2.45% of our income for our own retirement. Now, if you're a money monk, you would probably disagree with my assessment. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put 8% because I think it's important to give some money away. Now, if you, well, no, I'm going to change that. If you come down here, your goal is to get this at about 99 point something percent. You can't go over 100%, otherwise you're going to fail the exercise. So I take that back. I'm going to put this down to 2%, and this is what's guiding me. Housing, furnishing, and equipment, national average is 3.6. I'm going to put 2%. Live like a bachelor. Housing, operations, and maintenance, again, that's going to be the national average. So I'm going to put 2% in there again. Can't really control that very much. Miscellaneous. I'm going to leave line 17 for last. Next thing I'm going to put is housing supplies. I'm going to leave that as the national average because I just don't know. Personal care. Little fun fact for all of you out there, I actually cut my own hair. A skill I wish I had learned in the Marine Corps because it cost me $5 once a week to get a haircut. And wish I would have learned how to do it myself. So personal care, I'm going to put 0.001. See what I get. Nope, 3 cents. Probably going to be a little more than that. I'm going to put 0.5%. So $17 a month. That sounds about right. Alcohol, I don't drink, so leave that at 0. Tobacco, I don't use tobacco. We'll leave that at 0. Life insurance, I'm going to put that as the national average, so 0.6. Whoop. Life insurance and other. And actually, that is pretty close to what I pay for term life insurance. Now, reading. Because of my job and interests, I actually spend a significant amount of money, much more than $6.86. So I'm going to go ahead and put 3% just to see what I get. Whoa. And there we go. Now, interesting. I don't spend $102 a month on reading, so I'm going to go ahead and I probably spend about $40 a month. So I'm going to adjust that to 0.005. No, more than that. Let's do 1%. That's pretty close. $34 a month on reading. Okay, now when I come down here, what you'll notice is this is 97.65. What I'm going to do is then I'm going to go back into this miscellaneous and whatever in this category. I would say I probably spend a couple $100 a year on hunting and hunting supplies. So I'm going to enter in 2% into that category. And actually $68, that's pretty expensive, but I suppose there's other hunting things and shooting sports that I get into aside from hunting. So I'm going to put that there. Maybe you have a hobby or something else. Try to figure out how much you spend a month on that, estimate it, and then put that in here. And what you're doing is just making adjustments to this based on your lifestyle, what you think your wants and needs are, how you almost perceive yourself compared to the national average, and then adjust it in monetary means here. Now, again, a couple things I did differently compared to the national average here was for housing I kept the same. Now, here's the next piece that we're going to do is I'm going to find out how much $685, how much of a house that can buy me. I'm going to look at vehicle payment, and I'm going to go on a vehicle payment calculator and figure out how much of a car I can get for $137. And those types of things. So that's what we're doing with a budget. Then what I want you to do, or what I would recommend you do, is save this right away. This is important information, I think, for you to keep. Now, another component to this before we get on into this other stuff is what my wife and I do. And what we do is I have a mint.com account. I'm going to try to show you what that looks like, or at least some print shots of it. All right. And this is a screenshot of what you can get with mint.com. And in there, you have basic titles, and mint.com will track all of your expenses, and it will categorize them based on where you're shopping at. Little trick I do is most of my groceries I actually get at Hy-Vee, and then most of my other housing supplies I get at Walmart. And it automatically categorizes those transactions, the ones at Hy-Vee, into groceries, and the ones at Walmart into household items. And then it will break these up into a category. So all my wife and I have to do to see if we're living within our means is look at that and compare it to a benchmark to the national average. Once I see that, we can literally see, are we living within the mean? Are we living within the national average? And I can tell you for pension and retirement, and this is real, my wife and I actually save 22% of our income, just a little more. We save it. About 15% of it goes straight into my wife's 401k. My entire income goes into a savings account for investments and other things. And it's amazing in a short amount of time when you're saving that amount, how easy it is to get an emergency fund, and you start almost stockpiling cash. And a flip side of the problem of not having money is knowing what to do with the money you do have. It's a nice problem to have. So again, here we've put all these down. Now the next thing this financial model calculates is calculates a 3-month, 6-month, and 9-month emergency fund. So based on making $45,000 a year in select different types of expenditures here, it's I don't remember what the formula I used, but some of these expenses are taken out for an emergency fund, such as Social Security is removed. This will tally a different emergency fund. So the next question you have to fill in here is, are you going to have an emergency fund? If so, how much? Now, I'm rather risk averse, so I would probably want an emergency fund between 9 and 12 months. So I would want, I'm just going to round up and say $22,000. The answer then would be yes, and $22,000. Now, if you're the type of person that can accept a little more risk, maybe you want a 3-month emergency fund. Now, I would recommend, most financial professionals would recommend that if you have children and a spouse, you have between, I would say, more than a 6-month emergency fund. If you're single or you're married and you're in what's called dinkhood, and dinkhood is dual income, no kids, usually 6 months or less of an emergency fund is fine. Now, the next piece of information I want to find out is, how much of a house can I afford? So what we're going to do, I'm going to write down this number, $685.60. I'm going to go to this hyperlinks one more time, and I'm going to look under a mortgage calculator. And with this calculator, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to adjust all this information until I have a monthly payment that's about $685 or pretty close to that. So I'm going to start off with a home value of $125,000. I'm going to put a loan amount, so I'm going to assume I have a 20% down payment or around there. I'm going to put $112 as a loan amount. I'm going to leave the interest rate, I'm going to change that to 3.75, which would be an average for a Class A rating credit score. I'm going to leave the loan term at 30. I'm going to leave all of this the same, and I'm going to hit calculate. I'm going to scroll down, and what do you know? I get a monthly payment of $648. So here's what, though, I'm going to look at. I'm sure some of you remember, but I don't. It was $685 was the amount that I budgeted for a house. So $685, I'm going to try to increase that just a little bit. So I'm going to increase the loan amount to $115,000, leave everything else the same and hit calculate. And again, my goal. Okay, so I'm going to change this. I'm going to go 135,000. I'm going to change that to 120 for a loan amount. We'll see if I can get close to 685. A little too much, so I'm going to try 130,000. Again, we're just monkeying with this, and I'm going to do 119,000. Close enough. Just about there. 686. So I can afford a home value of about $130,000. The next thing I'm going to do, just for fun, and you don't have to do anything with this, is I'm going to go to a local realtor's website, brookingshomes.com. That's for Brookings, South Dakota. Well, I clearly didn't enter something in here. There we go. And I'm going to look up how much of a house $130,000 gets me. So I click in here. And I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to keep scrolling until I find $130,000 in houses that are around that area. So I'll look at what 125 gets me. They're just under 125, and maybe I'll look at it. I'm just going to see, again, what I can afford and what that gets me. Probably not going to have a ton of square footage. That doesn't look too bad. Might be a little tight. I'm going to go back up. I'm going to do 125 to 175. And again, just trying to see what that gets me. Now, unfortunately, some of you are probably going to have a salary that's around $30,000, and the home you're looking at might be $70,000 or the home price. There are a few on there, but not a lot. In that case, you may want to consider getting a roommate. 129 in Brookings, and that's what that gets me. So you can get an idea of a little bit of what your future looks like. The next piece I'm going to do here, so I'm going to enter in what's your price limit when buying a home. Now, based on $685, I can afford a $130,000 house. Okay? Because that's my price limit with a budget of $685. Now, again, under line 1, you can enter in up to 28%, but you can't go over that. So just to see, if I did 28%, I could afford a $960 mortgage payment. But I'm going to leave it at 20%. Next thing I'm going to look at is my price limit when buying a vehicle. We're going to use the same, or not the same calculator. We'll use a vehicle calculator. but I budgeted in line 6 $137 for a vehicle payment. So I'm going to go to hyperlinks, I'm going to go to vehicle loan calculator, and I will make adjustments to the vehicle. I'm going to start at $5,000 with a down payment of 10% or $500 and a trade-in of nothing. Sales tax in South Dakota, I'm going to put 6%. Leave the interest rate. Oh, and I'm already there. About a $5,000 vehicle is what I can afford. Now, if I change this to 60 months, which is 5 years, let's see how much I can afford there. I'm going to try $10,000. You can have a longer term option than 60 months. That being said, I would ask that you don't go over 60 months. So here I'm going to go to 182 is more than I can afford, so let's try $7,000. 125, let's do 7,250. Close enough. 130 bucks, that's close enough to 137, so I can afford a $7,200 vehicle. So I'm going to scroll down here. I'm going to enter in my price limit when buying a vehicle is $7,250. Now the next thing I want you to enter in is what lines did you enter significantly more or less than the national average and why? When I say significantly more, what I'm looking for is significantly more. So if the national average for housing and physical dwelling is 20%, if you put 28%, that to me would be a substantial change. Food at home, I increase that by 3% up to 10% from 7%. That's a substantial change. So I'm going to enter those into here. Spent more on food at home. Don't like eating out. I spent less on vehicles because I don't like spending money on vehicles. Okay, so everything up here that you either spent more or less than the national average, I want to enter here. Next thing is, if your budget's less than 100%, where's that money going? I'm talking probably less than 98% in this line. Okay, if it's 99.65, you're fine. If it's 99 point anything, you're fine. If it's 97%, you're not fine. Tell me where that money's going and why it's going there. And any additional comments about the exercise, what you learned, what interested you here. Now, again, some students like this exercise and some really don't like it because they don't like knowing based on their level of income. I can tell how much of a car they can afford, how much of a house they can afford, and all these other things. Again, some like it because they want to know what their future holds. Some find it a little disappointing when they find out that life's not going to be a bowl of chocolates for them, or it's not going to be the bowl of chocolates they thought they wanted. So again, for this exercise, what you will need to turn into the Dropbox is this benchmark exercise. I want you to, again, put that in the Dropbox. I want you to submit that matrix. We'll go back here. So you're going to submit the benchmark. I apologize, I had to pause there. Submit the benchmark. You're going to submit that matrix. Okay, put that in the Dropbox, this, and then a one-page analysis that answers the description Project 1 portfolio. If I click on that, you're going to answer these questions. Give me your major and minor. incorporate the information you found in the MBTI analysis, which seems to be the best option. And one I didn't put here that I want you to put is what career should you avoid? What option will be the one you'll most likely choose from the matrix? What happens when you incorporate the location to your analysis and cost of living? And based on all the information reviewed, what do you think is a plausible average starting salary? You'll put that into the benchmark. Okay, now here's what you'll need to turn in. The matrix filled out, a one-page analysis of that matrix, answering these questions, and the benchmark. You will not need to do 3 and 4, which is an income statement and a personal balance sheet. Feel free to email me about any questions regarding that, and right now you don't have to worry about this project too. Wish you the best of luck. Again, contact me if you have any questions.